Welcome back to Days of Our Lives. It's your host Richard, starring old Slapping Mike. A little bit under the weather today. Don't have kids, because if they get sick, then they get you sick. I don't recommend it. But yeah, motor's out. About to pull the cylinder heads off, camshaft, timing components, all that. Set those off to the side. I need to do the valve springs on the cylinder heads. We're going to do the pack springs that we run on every single combo we've ever built here, except for the Blue Beam. Blue Beam runs something different. And then, yeah, once that's done, we'll slap the heads on the Aluminator with head studs and kinetic head gaskets, and there'll be some footage of that. But before that, I need to find this crank bolt. I had cammed this motor previously, so it's got aftermarket cams from Comp, and they make this nice little feature that not a lot of the stock cams or some of the aftermarket cams have. They have like a hex, so you can put your crescent wrench on there or your wrench and hold the cams tight while you loosen the bolts.
Sound check, sound check. Welcome back. This is, what day is this? Day 3 of the Aluminator Paxton build. Quick refresher, this car was previously cammed by us, supercharged by us, and tuned here in-house via Lund Racing. Like I said, day 3 of the build, we have the engine on the stand and gets wrapped up and put away. So we need to take the motor mounts off of it, the filter housing, the oil pan, cylinder head dowels, all that stuff needs to come off. Any remaining sensors like crankshaft position sensor, knock sensors, all that stuff gets put away until it's time to assemble the long block, which to do that, we need to replace these valve springs. And what we're doing is a personal favorite, the Pack-1234-X. When you do a Coyote, you need 32 springs. So 2 boxes of these will get you squared away because it's a 32 valve motor, so you need 16 per cylinder head, obviously. It's a tedious task, but it is rewarding, especially for you guys that are stock bottom men that just want to do like a valve spring and headset upgrade. This is the spring that we run when we do stuff like that, because a lot of your, I won't talk about other turbo companies, but off-the-shelf turbo companies like that sell turbo kits, a lot of them have really bad back pressure issues, and it's prevalent on stock valve springs. So you can combat that by switching to like a stiffer valve spring like these. And the thing about these is that they use the factory locks, the factory retainer clip, and the factory stem seal. So there's no issues with it ripping up the valve stem seal out of the pocket or anything like that. It's also good for you to look at these engines closer after tearing them apart after being boosted for a couple, 100 or 1,000 miles, if you're going to do upgrades, to see how the valve guides are wearing. Everybody knows a lot of these Coyotes have consumption issues, and a lot of that comes from either rings or valve guides walking in their respective bores. Typically like to look at things like that too. This one gave me no indication of the faces of the chamber being stained with oil or anything like that, so there's no reason for me to look at the valve and pull it all the way out just to inspect it. Everything seems pretty solid on this build, given the fact that it is relatively low mileage. But I mean, even then, it's just good preference to check here every now and then. And when I like to do these, I always start with the intake side first of the cylinder head because it's the easiest one to deal with. They sit up higher, meaning you don't have to press in the spring down as much, the factory spring that is. Compress the spring, it likes to take the valve down with it. You just got to give it a little love tap, square on the face of the valve so you don't, make sure you're square on that, because if you hit it wrong, you can bend the valve, and we don't want to do that. And then get you a magnet and get your keepers out, put them off to the side, loosen the compressor. I'll use the gun to zip it with sometimes, it just depends. Sometimes on some, I've had it in the past where if I use the impact, it may rattle the keepers off while I'm trying to go back together with it. So I just want to be, a little bit more surgical in the way that I do these. here lately. So it does take a little bit longer, yes, but it's almost required at this point, with given the fact that some of these keepers, if you're not using heavy grease or like green grease or like Vaseline or something, I'm using just regular assembly lube to kind of help like the little keepers stay in place, the little locks. And there's the stock. This is the second valve spring on the intake side, and wiggle the valve in there. There's no movement in the bore. You can get technical with it and put like a micrometer on it or whatever, or a dial bore, or you know, whatever you want, and measure it. But if there's not a whole lot of play in there, it's good. And for what we're doing, this is good enough. And these are the springs that I like to run, you know, on your stock bottom end stuff, all the way up to like the some of the built engines. These aren't what we run in the Blue Bean or in the black truck, but those springs, you know, they need to be, you know, set up within solid height. They need to be, you know, they got to measure for coil bind, all that stuff. These are basically drop, you know, plug and play, if you will, real hassle free. Now, would I trust these at 2,000 horsepower? I mean, maybe. It depends on who the owner of the car is, and if it's me, I mean, I'd like to see, you know, just what would happen. But now I'm just rambling. Sometimes these springs will not sit square. You have to rotate them around a little bit, kind of just get the spring happy, where if you can press it down with the tool, with the arbor, it doesn't go into the side of the valve and go down with it. So you kind of have to get, you're gonna have to get it square a little bit. But it's a hassle, and it's I wouldn't say it's labor intensive, but it is labor hour intensive. If you're gonna pay somebody like me to do something like this, or a shop, you know, just be prepared to pay some labor hours, because it does take a little bit to do. Unfortunately, I mean, that's the price we pay. I mean, these engines are pretty awesome. I don't prefer them, you know, 100% of the time, but they make power, and they make power because of the cylinder heads having 4 valves per cylinder, hence the term 4-valve. Some of these do give you trouble from time to time, but that's okay. It's gonna be a long one anyways. I'll be here probably till 9 tonight, trying to get caught up on all this, and it's going down square. So yeah, there's little tricks you pick up here and there, and if you decide to tackle this on your own, which I recommend everybody try at least once, I would definitely look into doing it by hand the first time, and then as you get more comfortable with it, try using like a small soft impact on the lowest setting. That way you don't draw the threads out of the tool. And some of you guys may have some more questions about the back pressure issues with the cheaper turbo kits and stuff like that. I'd say it's curable. I've seen a lot of twin turbo setups that on the Coyote, they start kind of like making that weird farting noise, that wide open throttle, like around anything past like 13 pounds, 14 pounds, even 16 pounds. A lot of that, it's gonna be due to the downpipe sizing and turbine housing on those turbos that you're running. A lot of your higher end turbos won't do that. Like think like Precision, VS Racing on the lower end, HPT, I think, are some of the most recent ones that are doing pretty good too, and they have what I consider to be appropriately sized turbos for a Coyote. Don't get me wrong, these cheaper kits, they work great up to a certain point, and then you got to spend, you know, that big boy money and go about it that way. But if you don't feel like doing all that, the next best thing to do is upgrade your valve springs to try to combat some of that valve float, because it will hurt stuff after a while. Now, thanks to the assembly lube, I have both of the locks stuck to the valve stem tip, and now I can loosen. And this is the part where I don't like to go backwards on the impact if I'm doing it with the gun, because it will rattle the tool and the valve itself, and it'll make the locks fall off. And keep in mind, I'm not using grease on this one, just because we're out, and I don't want to bother my neighbor for some. He's in the middle of it. He's working on the truck right now. So you guys saw the last video where it dynoed the horsepower numbers and stuff, and by the time I'm talking about this and you guys are watching it, you would have already seen that video. We also ran into some back pressure issues, and keep in mind, we just had that conversation about valve springs and turbo sizing, and there was this instance with this truck, because of the size of the downpipes that we initially made for this turbo kit, this last revision on this black truck, it did have a little bit of back pressure issues up top, past, you know, 20, 25 pounds, started seeing a little bit of a back pressure present in the system. And we have things that we measure with, and we know, because it didn't do it in the Blue Bean with the same turbos. The obvious culprit there would be the downpipe, so we're gonna have to step up on the downpipe sizing. and deal with that appropriately before we take it out to go make test hits. And you just want to avoid that. And the reason why is it generates a lot of EGTs, and it really puts a strain on your valve train. And again, it's all tied in together. Coyotes, I'll be the first one to admit, as much as I love these engines, I love LTs, LS, and Coyotes. Like, those are my main three. The consumption issue that is prevalent in these engines, you need to be aware of that and on top of it, because if you go out, if you have a boosted vehicle and you go out and you're making hits back to back and taking it to the track every weekend and you don't check the oil level, you're gonna have bad issues with VCT not controlling your camshaft timing correctly. Let's just say you have back pressure just at the same time with these valve springs not keeping up, or your downpipe's too small for the turbo setup. You're just throwing coals on the fire and making matters worse for you. You guys out there that are running turbo setups or blower setups and make big power, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't fix the symptoms soon, the repair is usually almost always more expensive than it would have been had you not caught the problem early on to begin with. And that's just part of it. I mean, if you know, it's racing, stuff breaks. So we're on the third spring now. So like I said, sometimes it takes me about an hour. Just being careful with everything and keeping an eye on things. And I will use like a plastic table here in the shop just because I don't mainly have like a workbench that I do cylinder heads on. But the reason for the plastic table is in case the valve starts to go down with it and I'm cranking down on this thing, I don't bend the valve. And like I said on this one, a lot of them, you know, they're gonna get stuck. So you just give it a little small love tap. The locks will shoot out in most cases. There's one right there. I'll set it off to the side. The other one should be here in the pocket somewhere. We'll find it. It's right here. So just keep in mind, just small love taps. You don't want to bend the face of that valve and end up with a random misfire that you can't track down after the fact. And that's why I like to do things by hand on these cylinder heads. And I'll probably do the next one with the power tool. But there's better compressors out there. I just don't have one at the moment. And for me to hold up progress because I'm waiting on a tool seems kind of silly to me. So I'd rather just get it done with what I have and keep on trucking. Kind of just get everything out of the way. Once the long block's back up and going, I'm gonna pick this car up in the air, remove the front half of the suspension pieces. We're talking K-member, control arms, all that stuff. It's all coming off. We're gonna go to tubular components, control arms, K-member, stuff like that. Probably get the car a little bit lighter for the customer, so you can go out to the 8th Mall and race it. He's a big-time 8th Mall racer. He recently got into it, so he likes, you know, he likes going out to HMP here locally in Houston and racing, you know, for money on the side here and there. He went like low sixes the first time out, I believe, on not that much boost. The car only makes like 870, I think, if I remember correctly. But now he's ready for more power. So in order to make more power reliably, he asked us. We talked to Brian, but Brian was basically like, well, we could do an Aluminator, and that way we don't have to worry about lead times with like the bigger engine builders. Like, don't get me wrong, TKM gets stuff knocked out for us fast, but that might not always be the case. You know, I can't speak for their lead times. I don't work there, but every time we've ordered one, they're usually quick. But in the off chance that they aren't, you don't want to be without the car, you know, for 2 or 3 months waiting on the long block to get back from, you know, any given engine builder. I've waited up to 6 months on my own personal stuff, not Coyote stuff, but you know, in the past, back whenever I used to trust machine shops, the local ones anyways, I have no problems with TKM or FFRE or any of those other companies. So the next best thing is to order an Aluminator from Ford. And if you may not know, you can probably look it up yourself, but I'll give you a small rundown. It's a 100% from Ford. You can order it at the counter or online from JEGS, Summit, whatever, and you can do 1100, 1200 horsepower on it and not worry about something coming apart, you know, within reason. Obviously, if you're fighting IAT issues or like old pressure problems, then yeah, you know, it's not gonna live a long happy life, but that's with anything, right? But no, they're solid for what they are. They come with 4 rods and pistons and ARP main studs, super solid motors. I like to use the Cometic head gaskets to put them in head stud. You know, make sure you put a fresh set of chains on it and fresh phasers, and like I said, valve springs, because that's one of the important parts of this build. Keeping away from valve fluid, because we're going to boost it up a little bit more. We're going to put a bigger head unit on it too, if I'm not mistaken. So the Paxton 2200 SL is going to come out, and we're going to step it up to a bigger Paxton unit, try to make some steam with it. I'm going to have to do an IAT control. A way to control that, I need to do like a meth kit on it as well. this go around. That is valve spring number 3. You got 13 more to go. The neat part about this tool is it lets you do 4 in a row without moving it too much. There's probably like the air compressor valve spring tools that you can use to make this job a little bit quicker, but like I said, this is what we got.